Welcome everybody to the next edition of the Docplanner Tech meetup series. This time we're going to be talking about data engineering or data platform. This is the first edition in which we're going to be touching on the data engineering topic, which makes us even more excited. It's good to see the icons of you all. We are glad that you came to join us today. My name is Wojtek. I'm going to be your host today. I'm working in the data platform team as a data engineer. I've been working as a data engineer for quite some time now. And in that time, we've been trying to shape the data platform system, how it is working, how we collaborate with our users in many different ways. We've been experimenting and still are. This system is under constant review or scrutiny, but we think that we've come up with a system that works pretty well, and today we'll be sharing our discoveries and our journey. Just so you know, the purpose of this meetup is just to share our knowledge. The intentions are pure. We are not even hiring right now. We are going to be having two talks today. We've got two speakers with us. Petra and Yorgos. They are both working in the data platform team, but the team they are working in is not the only thing that they share, that they've got in common. I would point to other things, one of them being basketball. Petra used to be a professional basketball player, whereas Yorgos is a huge fan of basketball, of this sport. And the other point being having enormous knowledge of a country different to their motherland. So Petra is an expert in Spanish cuisine and wine, and Yorgos is an expert in Polish history and politics. They are going to share with you two talks. But before I go to the talks agenda, let me just tell you about the Q&A section and how we are going to be communicating with you throughout this meetup. So we've got both chat and Q&A enabled. Feel free to use any of them. I'll be trying to answer, or I'll make sure that every question is answered. We'd prefer, if you've got some specific answers, specific questions, please post them in the Q&A section. But if you prefer the chat, I will just paste it to the Q&A. The speakers will answer your questions at the end of the presentations. If you've got any other remarks, I will be reviewing the chat section constantly, so don't worry, you won't be omitted. Okay, let's get to the presentations themselves. Let me quickly preview the agenda that we are having and tell you what you can expect from it. So first, Petra is going to be Petra will give her talk. Petra works as a project manager in the data platform team, and at least for me, having a project manager in a data platform, data engineering team is quite a unique decision, and this decision proved to be very solid. Petra is going to be sharing her experience as a project manager coming from non-IT project management background. She'll give some more context to how she and we all are making it work. And she's going to share some lessons learned from her almost a year lasting journey now. And next, Yorgos is going to be talking about, Yorgos is working as a data warehouse engineer in the data platform team, and he's going to be focusing on the topic of analytics enablement and how we treat our users, or how we treat our colleagues, data analysts, data engineers, data analysts, analytics engineers, as users of our service, how we are trying to collaborate with them on data platform development, how it all suits the tech stack that we've decided to go for, stuff like that. Okay, without further ado, let's welcome the first speaker of today, Petra. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Wojtek. Thank you so much for a nice introduction in first place. Let me just say that I'm super excited to share this virtual space with all of you, even though I don't see you, but I'm imagining all of the people behind. So I just hope that you will enjoy it. That's our, or at least my main objective here. So as Wojtek said, without further ado, let's kick it out. So as during the whole meetup, we'll be talking about data platform team in Docplanner. We wanted to start with giving you an introduction of what is the spot of our team inside the company and what is our impact. So we are a small team of 9 team members, broken down to the role levels. We've got engineering manager, data engineers, data warehouse engineers, and a project manager, myself. In terms of speaking about the impact, we are serving around 140 internal customers who are analysts. And through them, we are practically supporting the whole business, comprising nearly 2,800 members in an indirect way. Getting back to our team, the data processing flow starts with data engineers who are bringing data from different data sources to our data warehouse. And they're moving big data. And I like to imagine them like with this virtual shovel, taking the data from one place and putting them into another, the easiest possible way. Then data warehouse engineers come in place, and they are structuring this data into the blocks, as they are dedicated to modeling of the data inside data warehouse. And they are also trying to make it easier for the analysts to produce their final data artifacts. In terms of collaboration, data engineers are collaborating closely to a platform and reliability team. Outside of the planner, this would be more commonly known as DevOps team, while data warehouse engineers, collaborate more closely with the analysts. Now we can deep dive into the definition of our team. So in a nutshell, data platform provides a platform for data-driven business analysis. And what we mean by data platform is the foundation on which data enabling tools and processes can be built to enable better use of data. Our first general objective is that data supports decision-making at Docplanner. And how do we achieve this objective? In a way that analysts focus on analysis, and we provide them with data and tools. And the third general objective is that data warehouse is the one source of truth for calculating all business and tech metrics. So if you wanted to summarize the mission of our team in one single sentence, it would sound as simple, but as true as that we want to make our analysts' lives easier. To be more specific, we can have a look at the scope of work at our team. So we are basically taking care of our most important or our biggest product, which is data warehouse, in regards to its performance, stability, optimization, and monitoring. As previously mentioned, we are also taking care of bringing data from different data sources to data warehouse. So taking care of this new integrations, but also taking care of the structure of these data inside data warehouse. So the purpose is to to structure the data in the most digestible way, or as digestible as possible for the analysts. Another important chunk of work in our team is handling requests and bugs from our direct stakeholders around data processing. And we are also contributing to our own infrastructure. The following two bubbles in white are the future projects that we want to handle. An interesting one to mention is analytics platform, which would enable analysts to perform more sophisticated analytics. And this would be also like opening door for machine learning at Docplanner. And enabling of analysts 2.0. I allowed myself to coin it with 2.0 tech. As precisely Yorgos in his part of the presentation, we'll showcase some real case scenarios of how our analysts are already enabled to certain part of our data processes in a structured and controlled way. But what we want to explore further is to understand analyst needs, their pain points, and either provide them with a replicable solution or find out the way how to upskill them technically so that they can achieve the desired level of autonomy they need. Now I would like to take a step back and take you back in time to understand the chronology of the team. As it was set up only 4 years ago, 4 years, sorry, that would be, yeah, 4 years. 4 years ago, starting with 2 data engineers, and actually you already had the pleasure to meet one of them. So Wojtek was what would we call a dinosaur, kind of, on our team. And scaling up to the current shape of 19 members. Important to note is that there was also an underlying organizational change going on in Docplanner as the company jumped over the course of 10 years from a small startup to a large international company. And the evolution of our team, or the growth of data platform team, has pretty much copied the growth of the company. But I guess you're missing data here in order to fully believe me, given the segmentation of the audience we are expecting today. So let's please everyone. So in the case of our team, data platform grew from 2 team members to 19 members since its origin. So the team grew by 350%. In comparison to the growth of Docplanner, as in 2018, the company grew from 650 employees to almost 2,800 employees, and that's translating into the company's growth of 330%. So this organizational change inevitably resulted in the increase of maintenance and infrastructure needs for our team, and also in the growing demand from our stakeholders, both in the actual number of stakeholders that the team needed to support, and also in the number of projects that the team would be involved in. So it was pretty much a question of time, understanding the transition mode that the team has been overcoming, when a need for a standalone project manager would appear. And I'm using here the term standalone on purpose, because before I joined the team 10 months ago, the PM hat used to be worn partially by the engineering manager and partially by the team members themselves. So during my interview, I was questioning what were the needs for this newly created role from team's perspective. And I must say, I really liked the description because it was very human. They were looking for someone good at collaboration with stakeholders. They wanted someone excited about coordination. And this might come as no surprise that development teams usually get more excited about the development work. They also wanted someone to facilitate the communication. And it was quite evident that there was a need for this one centralized person who would hold accountability for complex cross-organizational projects. And very relevant reason was the fact that from the very beginning, the team had this vision focusing more efforts on understanding direct customers' needs, so on understanding analyst needs. And this would require to bring to the team more of a product thinking. So in the previous slide, we showed you what were the needs for this project manager role from team's perspective. And it is going to make more sense to you once you understand the direct or the high exposure our team has to our direct customers. Historically, data analytics teams and data engineers have very often worked together in a collaborative way. And this has only scaled up with the increasing growth of the company, while the projects where data support is needed have also scaled in complexity and dependencies, and these teams keep relying on each other. So this tight cooperation needed between data teams and data platform team, specific for Docplanner, heavily affects the proportion of our work required for supporting our users in comparison to the development work needed for our core product, which is data warehouse. And this is linking back to the previous reason why they were looking for a project manager, the need of facilitating the communication. And this is the case of the need of facilitating communication between data platform team and other teams, given the way that we manage the projects at Docplanner. So we as a team are required to be agile in provide support aligned to global companies' needs, while we still need to safeguard our own backlog. So what is my main role is precisely to bring alignment when we work on the projects involving multiple teams, acting as a facilitator. Before actually I'm able to perform the standard project manager role of planning, organizing the work, tracking the progress, and shipping the project inside data platform team. So it is pretty much all about the coordination, but in two different directions. First, coordination between data platform team and other teams, given the fact that this requires major needs, major efforts. And second, the coordination inside data platform team once we refine together the project tech solution requirements. So what we wanted to illustrate here is that a project manager role in data platform team at Docplanner might be perceived as a hybrid role between facilitator and a standard project manager, simply in response to the way that the data-related projects are managed in our company. And this might answer also your question or your doubts that if coming from a non-IT background, as Wojtek mentioned at the beginning, might be an obstacle for me to perform my current role or not. I would prefer the team themselves to answer this question. But given the high demand for coordination needed in my role, as explained, I believe that my previous professional experience is still applicable and still useful, regardless of the field. And of course, it's in my best interest to acquire deeper technical knowledge with the support of the team. So this is pretty much the point where we are right now. And here we are getting to my last slide, which will be slightly more personal. As curiosity is something that leads me to discover new things in life and somehow compensates for this discomfort of being a constant newbie. And this was also the case of my onboarding. As I was discovering in parallel a new team of individuals and also a brand new working environment. And this discovery journey has provided me with endless learning opportunities and a fresh pair of eyes on the existing structures, processes, workflows. And I guess that my look was unique and very different from anyone else. And and here I would just like to share those findings with you. So let's start. The first one, what was interesting for me to see was the fact that there isn't such an antagonism between waterfall, agile, shape-up, Kanban worlds, and actually they can even co-live in harmony, not necessarily compete with each other. At the end of the day, these are frameworks, guidelines, methodologies to help shape the projects for the teams. But the teams are made up of people, individuals, and the flow of work needs to work for the team in first place in order to be efficient. So there isn't really such a thing as one size fits all. And actually there can be a combination of them. Second, rephrasing what other team members said or other stakeholder proved to be a very good way of double checking, to double check one's understanding, but also to double check team's alignment. 3, never feel bad about asking the obvious question. And this is something I feel especially encouraged to do on our team, as I'm extremely lucky to work with highly empathetic team members. So this is my thank you to the team if they are watching. I think some of them are. 4, never underestimate the risk of misunderstandings. And this is especially true in the universe of remote work, of online meetings, and non-native speakers. 5, starting with a big picture introduction of a new topic to the whole team sets everybody on the same starting point, and the context is always necessary. 6, I truly believe that interpersonal skills are as important as hard skills, even on data engineering team. And what I could just confirm is that teaming up with other teams really increases the efficiency, and it is super helpful. And the way for me to see how the teams feel comfortable with each other is by the amount of jokes that they allow to make during the calls. So it's a very, very simple KPI. 7, get to know and observe your interlocutor, or invest some extra time in getting to know and observing your interlocutor. As everybody is unique with a unique communication style, the other person usually appreciates the extra effort when you are adapting to their communication needs. And this also pays off in the long run collaboration. And last observation I wanted to share here is that directness in communication is a true privilege, as it is a sign of trust on both ends. And it is something that needs to be built up within the team. But once achieved, this comfortable level of going straight to the point, it just makes the communication smoother. And here we came to my last bullet. So now I'm happy to leave the floor for Yorgos and let him transition to his part of the presentation of analytics enablement at Docplanner. So Yorgos, whenever you're ready, the mic is yours. I'll go mute.
Thank you, Petra. Thanks for your presentation and the lovely insights on the project management role in data platform team. And let me just confirm that it's a great success and it was needed. And of course, thank you, Wojtek, for hosting the meetup. And without further delay, let me move to my part of the presentation. So Petra mentioned earlier several numbers relevant to the growth of Docplanner. Of course, Petra, can you move the slide, please? Of course, together with the growth, scaling issues will also arise, and the data platform could not be an exception to this rule. So let's take a look at some quite common issues that come with that growth. First one is that the data platform team lacks business knowledge. And naturally, you cannot expect from a team of data engineers to be experts in business knowledge. But with such growth, this problem is even more amplified. The bigger the growth, the more business functions that we need to serve, and the more unknown projects in unknown areas, I would say. Second quite important issue is that because of the range of different functions, where our stakeholders operate, data modeling becomes quite complex, especially when we want to offer flexibility in changing the data structures rather than just producing one data set and saying to our stakeholders that this is your data set and limit their analysis. I think that people working daily with serving analytics teams would know exactly what I mean by this. Moving forward, another very common issue is the data warehouse multi-tenancy issues, and these are also amplified. The more users that we serve, Petra mentioned earlier that we serve around 140 users, but it can fluctuate at times to a bit more, a bit less. But generally, the more users, the bigger danger of suboptimal queries clogging the data warehouse. And maybe let me rephrase the word suboptimal here for something a bit more politically correct and call it computationally expensive queries. Fourth issue that comes to my mind is that a lot of time is needed for maintenance, and this is accumulating more tech debt. And naturally, when you have growth as a company, you'd have more functions to serve. So that means more pipelines. So the maintenance of these data pipelines is more time consuming, and as a consequence, tech debt is accumulating. And last but not least, there is the problem that is overlooked quite a lot. And this is the choice of the right tools to deliver our mission. This is not as straightforward as it used to be when the team when the company actually was smaller and the team had to serve less stakeholders. So moving forward, you might be thinking, how exactly do we tackle these issues? And my answer to this is that we have an approach in which the analysts community are coming to our rescue, like Mitch would be coming to the help of a drowning man in Baywatch. And I hope that this joke was more successful than it is. But let me just explain in a nutshell why we opted for such an approach in the data platform team at Docplanner. Why do we need analysts? What do we mean actually that analysts come to our rescue? And in order to understand this, let's have a look at the definition as well as an overview of data infrastructure in Docplanner. All right. So let me start here by saying that trying to find a globally accepted definition of data infrastructure will not get you very far, as expected, of course. Everyone has slightly different definition depending on their point of view, the team that they're working, the company that they're working, and so on. However, one thing that actually came across a lot online about data infrastructure is that it can be decomposed into four main components, and these are data assets, processes, actors or people in colloquial language, and technology. So I put together myself a definition, which I would just read for you right now, that data infrastructure consists of data assets supported by people, process, and technology. And one of its critical roles is to ensure that the right data will get to the right users and systems at the right time. So after looking at this definition, let me give you a brief introduction. Let me present you with a simplistic overview of how data infrastructure looks in our company, in Docplanner. You can see here that there is nothing out of the ordinary. We have some production databases. We have some third-party tools which are integrated, an S3 storage layer, and a data warehouse built on top of it. And of course, we also have some BI and reporting tools where the biggest volume of our stakeholders, either direct or indirect, the biggest volume of their analysis is taking place. So one can claim that the data asset component of our data infrastructure exists in all these places that I just mentioned. As far as the processes component is concerned, in our cases, our processes are mainly transferring data from all the aforementioned places to the data warehouse. Remember that Petra mentioned earlier that we need to use it as a single source of truth. There are, although, some situations in which we have data flowing in an opposite direction. That meaning from the data warehouse, we do some calculations and we send data to the third-party tools, for example, to some CRM tools that we are using. Okay, now where it becomes actually quite interesting, in my opinion, is in the people component of the data infrastructure. And if we observe our infrastructure in Docplanner, we will see that there is something quite common in almost all nodes of this diagram. And this is the existence of the same actors. If you can see the three little dots resembling people there, that's as best as I could draw it online. So these are the analysts. I would actually go that far to say that they're even present in the production databases where I haven't attached these three little dots by collaborating with the developer of the production databases and knowing what kind of data they need and asking the data platform team, us, to import them in the data warehouse. Regarding the technology component of our data infrastructure, let's look at it in the next slide. So here is a good centralized view of all the tech tools that we either use currently or we aspire to use in the future. I won't go too far in detail here, but let me just briefly mention that our main tools are Airflow, where the orchestration of all our pipelines takes place, and Redshift where processing takes place. Redshift, actually, to put it better, is where we try to model our data and distribute them timely and in an easily digestible format to our stakeholders. And speaking of modeling data, lately, I just would like to point out that we started using the Data Vault 2.0 modeling paradigm to model a subset of our data. And we did so as we found out that quite a common need for our stakeholders is to be able to go back in time in certain data sets. Now, actually, we are very close in introducing DBT in order to help us streamline even more this modeling process. As far as infrastructure is concerned and all the bells and whistles that come with it, containerization, Kubernetes and whatnot, I'm not a specialist here, so I would rather let my colleagues speak potentially in a future meetup about this. But let me just close this slide with by mentioning that at the moment, our team has little to do directly at the rightmost part of this tech stack table that I present you, visualizations and analytics. So we don't have someone in the team, for example, that would directly work with Tableau. Our work here is mostly cooperating with analytics teams to create and refresh data extracts used by the BI tools. Or it could be, for example, lifting and shifting some Google data and putting the result set to the data warehouse and vice versa. But generally, to paraphrase one of our colleagues, I would say that we are in a very good way to be fully healed by this disease that is called Google cytonucleosis, which, if not taken care of, can lead to death by Excel. And also, a very important thing to mention here is that at Docplanner, we try to use this tech available to us in an enabling way for our stakeholders. So what do I mean by this? we try to provide technical solutions, as already mentioned by Petra earlier, that would help our stakeholders, and as a consequence, we will be able to succeed our mission easier. And I believe that to achieve this, we need to have our stakeholders being able to integrate their analysis in our code base. So if we move to the next slide and take a look at how this analytics integration takes place. Here you can actually see the full process in a process flow diagram. So usually what will trigger this SQL integration process is some new business requirements that analysts will receive. Secondly, remember that we want to use data warehouse as our single source of truth. So if data exists already in the data warehouse, then the analysts can proceed with putting together their SQL code. If not, they need to raise a Jira request to our team, and we will need to add data in the warehouse before they can proceed. As part of the third step of the process, and once they have the code ready, they can run the pre-commit hook, which will run some SQL fluff checks on their files. And for those of you who are not aware of SQL fluff, this is a flexible and quite configurable SQL linter. And generally, it will inform about aesthetic violations in the SQL code that is trying to be committed in GitHub. And it will even fix a lot of these violations according to the rules that we can configure in the team. After SQL fluff checks pass, the last step of the review is a member of the data platform team to review actually the PR. And most probably the checks here will be quite simple. And I would say that we generally just check that the query is running in an acceptable time limit. And okay, I don't know what else. Maybe that it contains less than 38 joins and I don't know, 96 group by columns. Okay, I'm just kidding here, but if we spot that something can be improved, then we can send the PR back to the analyst and request some changes, or work with them collaboratively to rectify the issues. After the PR is merged, their SQL code becomes part of one of our Airflow DAGs, and the end result is either materialized in one of our data warehouse schemas as a table, or I don't know, or as a materialized view, or sent to a Google file, or sent to the CRM tools that I was talking about earlier, and so on. So now, moving to the next slide, I would like to see a bit more in detail how we use some of these technologies, or some of these tools rather, from a technical standpoint. So let's consider this example where our super analyst Mitch that we saw earlier wants to create a Tableau workbook that he wants to later on distribute to his stakeholders. In this Tableau workbook, he needs to include 2 reports. So what is the first thing that Mitch needs to do here? Well, he needs firstly to start working on the SQL code in Tableau interface, or for example, in Tableau desktop, for those of you that are aware, or in any other SQL client of his choice. Once he is certain about the format of the data he needs to include in this report, he can create an extract in Tableau, so as to speak in the BI language. But randomly triggering this extract refreshes can put a lot of pressure against the Redshift cluster. And this is obviously something that in the data platform we would like to avoid. So we need to help Mitch, and we came up with a solution, and here is where YAML firstly comes in play. So our friend Mitch needs to create a YAML file where he will include this Tableau workbook name, the name of the extracts, as well as some other extra parameters in the file, like distribution keys, sort keys. Remember that we are using Redshift, and the schema, for example, in which his data will reside in the data warehouse. Actually, he can even opt for having his data incrementally refreshed if the volume is too big for a full refresh daily. Also, he can specify some other upstream tasks that need to be run and before this extract refresh will take place. You can see that we have a key called dependencies, which points to another DAG and another task here. Moving forward now to the second step in the next slide. So this step is to provide the SQL files that will create the structure to be fed to the Tableau report. Remember that Mitch has already created the data warehouse structure. So he has the SQL code ready, but he needs to push it to our GitHub, to our code base. So let's take a look at the first version of this SQL. You can see that probably something was off with Mitch when writing this SQL, or it's just a matter of his preference here. There are some lowercase and capital letters mixed all over the place. The indentation of some of the select and from keywords is rather suboptimal, I would say. And there are also some white spaces between column names in the group by clause. Generally, it seems like some SQL code that would make us think, Mitch, please, like, what is this code? So the problem might look quite easily resolved in this specific example, but this is not actually the case when we are dealing with many such queries constantly coming to our just to review them, right? So we can't manually start fixing all the SQL code inconsistencies in our repo. We literally have hundreds, if not thousands, of DML files distributed among many different DAGs. So on top of that, you might also understand that most probably everyone has slightly different preferences when it comes to writing their SQL queries. So that would lead to a situation where we would have in our common repository with the analytics teams, one code style per each contributor. And this is something that we definitely don't want. So this is where SQL fluff is actually super useful. Maybe it's not fully clear by the second screenshot, but this is the output of SQL fluff when the pre-commit hook mentioned earlier runs. It will inform about all the violations that happened, and it will either fix these violations or give instructions to the person opening the PR about how to fix these so-called violations. And finally, you can see the final version of the SQL file, where you can actually observe that the code is quite clean right now without these aesthetic issues that we had in the first screenshot. Someone could claim that it's okay, it's production grade code. So this would be ready to be merged. But moving forward now, you might be asking, okay, we get that you use YAML files and SQL files, but how exactly all of these are coming together in your case? And the answer here, I would say that is rather simple, that we have just extended in data platform team some of the standard Airflow operators, and we have created custom operators that are mostly, for the most of it, rendering Jinja SQL templated files. Again, I wouldn't go too much into detail here, but let me just tell you that for the specific example that I'm presenting to you right now, the custom operator that we have created is called materialized view operator, and it will eventually create or refresh two materialized views, and in the schema that we could see earlier specified in the YAML file. And lastly, because we mentioned that the final deliverable of this whole process is to refresh the data in Tableau. So having them refreshed only in our data warehouse is not enough for Tableau. So for this reason, we need to use standard Airflow operators as well, like Python operator, to interact with Tableau API by making use of one of the Tableau's Python libraries, and eventually refreshing these extracts. All right, so moving forward, I would like to give you an overview of some quite important numbers relevant to our infrastructure, in my opinion. We are generally working in 5 repositories. Only in one of them we work collaboratively with analytics teams in a way similar to the one that I just presented. We have 2 more repos in which we are developing either internal Airflow plugins, like the custom operators I mentioned earlier, or other common functions and classes used in our DAGs. We also have an infrastructure as a code repository where our team, data platform, is using to work collaboratively with the platform and a reliability team that Petra also mentioned earlier. A second number is that, which is quite important for me, I would say, is that we currently have 114 Airflow DAGs where we have SQL code integrated in one way or another. Yes, you can see some of the rest. We actually have 19 custom Airflow operators developed at the moment. And we actually import data daily, snapshots. We are currently importing snapshots of more than 10 production databases, and we have integrated over 20 third-party tools. The frequency of update in these third-party tools can vary, and it can be every 15 minutes we can be bringing some data in the data warehouse, and it can be as not often as daily, let's say. Sometimes I would say that it's easier to integrate some tools, and sometimes it's harder. But I strongly believe that the proper communication that we have with the analytics teams is helping us a lot to maintain this number and to also maintain some quality in the integration of these tools. And moving forward, I would like to see some advantages of this analyst-oriented approach. I would like to present the advantages according to my opinion, of course. So maybe you can treat it with a pinch of salt, or you have another opinion, but let's go and do it by revisiting the problems that we have already mentioned. Okay, so you can see here all the problems concentrated again. We have the lack of business knowledge, complex data modeling, multi-tenancy issues, difficulty in tool choice, and increased tech debt and maintenance. So let's see how the advantages of our analyst-oriented approach tackle these issues. So first and foremost, you now don't need to worry about the limited business knowledge, as analysts will start shaping their data assets to a big extent. And needless to say here that this also resolves in a big extent the modeling trouble that has been mentioned already. And in my opinion, if we did not opt for such an approach, we would have to go for an approach of one-size-fits-all data sets, which in my opinion is not very agile, and it's, I guess, how data engineering teams were working 15 or 20 years ago, maybe 10, I don't know. I cannot give an exact number on this. But then another advantage that I can think is that by including data to be refreshed in regular intervals by Airflow or by whatever orchestration tool each team is using, we avoid standard multi-tenancy issues. So I mean here that when one knows that the data they need will be refreshed in a timely fashion by Airflow, then one doesn't need to run ad hoc heavy computational queries. So these computationally expensive queries are minimized and they are run on schedules, which can only have positive consequences. And at the end of the day, it actually helps us, it helps the writes on our data warehouse become faster. Another positive effect that I can think is that the maintenance of the pipelines is actually now shared between our data platform team and analytics teams. In our setting, we have also enabled some mechanisms to inform whenever a task is failing in Airflow. So if you remember in the YAML definition, there was a key which was called Slack ID. This ID corresponds to the business owner of the report, who will also be notified via Slack about the task that failed. Then the business owner can either resolve the issue alone or in collaboration with us. But in any case, the maintenance time is shared between the two sides, data platform and analytics teams. Of course, this leads to more development time by our sides, a refinement of the technical solutions, which will lead to less task failures in the future. And it starts being kind of a victorious circle rather than vicious circle, as I'd like to call it. And lastly, I would say that as far as it regards the choice of tools, it is dictated by their ease of use and the customizability. So yes, I would say that these are for quite big advantages, but moving to my last slide, you can see that actually what is the biggest advantage in my opinion is that there is bigger trust building between data teams. And maybe my view here is quite biased, as in the past I was also holding analyst position and I was also wearing analytics engineering hats in some of the previous companies that I was working. And whenever I had to work with data platform teams, however they were named, sometimes the cooperation was smooth, sometimes it was not so smooth. But generally, I would argue that with better cooperation, more trust was built. And this obviously could only have positive and desirable consequences. Like, for example, analytics teams being more eager to be engaged at your projects, or having bigger willingness to learn about your processes and how to contribute to them. This way, of course, they will achieve the results faster and we will achieve our mission faster. And also, sometimes analysts, maybe from an egoistical point of view, they will start sharing more responsibility just to upskill themselves faster. So this is also a positive byproduct of this analyst-oriented approach. Okay, so generally speaking, having seen all these advantages of such an approach, you might be wondering, okay, that's good, but what is the purpose of your presentation in this meetup? So I would like to point out that to achieve good results, in my opinion, it's not always a matter of using the most bleeding edge tech, but it's rather about how good you build your processes and you integrate your stakeholders to your processes. Of course, it's understandable that every company would have different processes, but my statement would be to engage the analytics community, no matter how big this community is in your company, and try to make your processes receptive to their input. Because in my opinion, it will surely pay off at one point, sooner or later. And this would be all from me. And I think that Wojtek can now regulate the questions part, maybe.
Yes, thank you, Yorgos. There is a couple of questions to you, actually. So if you could please read them. Do you see them, or do you want me to read them out loud? You're muted, Yorgos.
Sorry about that. I can see the questions. I can see that one question is about how do we store our data model, and if we are using a data catalog. So to answer to how we store the data model, I think that still we are doing it via some YAML files again, in our case, which means that of course, every YAML file will have some different model to it, let's say. It would need some different keys and so on. But you can imagine, for example, that we have some YAML files where we will be putting what is the primary key, what is the staging area, what do we need to have as a distribution key and sort key and so on. But if we use a data catalog, we do not use one at the moment. And it's I'm not sure it's on the roadmap, and I'm not sure I understand 100% the question about how do we describe the data for further usage. If you want to explain a bit about that, Rafa, I might be able to answer. And I can see also another question by Rafa. How do we approach building Data Vault? So we started by manually preparing some SQL files, some SQL files in the data platform team to start and see and observe some common patterns about how to build Data Vault, because you can build Data Vault from quite different, I guess, quite different stage area tables. So, for example, you might have a changelog table, or you might have a quite clean stage area. Now, I think that we are at a point where we have somehow conformed what kind of template we need for this Data Vault structures that we need to create. So we are at the process of using DBT in order to help us streamline the creation of hub tables, satellite tables, links, and so on. Should I move to the next question? So, I mean, there are some questions here that I guess are for Petra as well.
Yes, but there is this one more from Rafał as well. He's given some more context to the data catalog.
Okay. I see it now, sorry. So with data catalog, how the analysts can understand the data and gain common knowledge. So this is something that we need to work on generally. And we need to work on actually improving our documentation of our data models. Because this is not only, for the data model, we can help materialize the data model, but analysts are also, and analytics teams are the ones responsible to defining up to a certain extent the business model. So we work collaboratively and we are trying to store data model README files in GitHub, for example, or we use some collaborative tools in order to store some data about data tables, data views, and so on. And I guess that there is also another one.
If I may add something to the data catalog question, we've started with this raw approach of having, as Yorgos said, tables defined in configuration files, basically. And there we had also some documentation on tables as well. So it's not that we are starting from the absolute beginning. We've got some input already, but still we'd like to have it in a more civilized form, Amundsen or any other, I don't know, data hub catalog, something like that. The input is already prepared. It's just that we need to deploy it and enrich it. But definitely we see a need of doing that, yes.
There are some more questions. So one more question for me, I guess, is that if each data engineer knows all the tech stack, or if we're sharing them as a responsibility. I would say that there is an overlap between all of us, but each of us would have different strengths, I would guess, in terms of the tech stack. Yeah, and that's it. But for sure, everyone could step up and help if something is needed. I can help with mostly with SQL from a data modeling point of view. If I need to add something in the infrastructure as a code repo, maybe I would have a bit more harder time, but I will manage to do it eventually. So I would guess that we are sharing the responsibility, but of course everyone can help the other. And for sure, not everyone knows 100% of our tech stack to the maximum extent. Okay. Okay. Question from Patrick here. Hey, Patrick. About DBT. Really glad to see a question from you. Okay, so this part is being work in progress by Carol in the team, and he would be more, I guess, he would be more responsible to answer this, but I guess that eventually we would be running it from a bus operator in Airflow or something like this. But this is as much as I can tell. And again, Rafał, did you customize the Data Vault 2.0? What exactly do you mean, current version of satellites? Yes, if you want to, please write me again about, because I don't understand what is meant by current version of satellites here. and I will answer to this. No, we are not dropping the history. We are keeping history. And well, we did not customize the data vault paradigm per se, but I think that we customized a little bit the code that we need to run, because you can get off-the-shelf tools that you can just again use as with YAML files. Give the primary key, the load ETL date, and so on, and it will produce you all the code that is needed for the satellite tables or hub tables or link tables, and it will build the full data vault model. So yes, we customized a little bit the code to be run for this. Size of Airflow cluster. Maybe Wojtek, you can answer about this?
No, sorry. I was actually cleaning the Metastore recently, but I need to check it out. I recommend Staszek reaching out to us. We're gonna be having an integration party in April, so you might come in person and ask that question.
Okay, I'm not
Yorgos,
quite
have
sure.
you seen the questions from the Q&A panel?
No, I think that I'm missing some questions right now. I'm not sure where I can find them.
You click on the Q&A button in Zoom. Do you have it? On the bottom.
Okay, yes.
There it is.
From your experience with Data Vault, can you share with us a couple of pros and cons? Well, pros is that it's quite clear to define, I would say, constraints later on between objects. A big con, in my opinion, is that it's sometimes quite difficult when you are serving so many stakeholders to build immediately some star schema on top of it. For example, many analysts would like to do different style of analysis in the data. And there is not one size fits all star schema, let's put it this way, at the moment. Do you use any tool for data quality monitoring alerting? I think we are using New Relic, but again, for this, I'm not the specialist to answer. So
yeah, we are using New Relic for monitoring. We've also got integration with Slack, alerting integration with Slack. And for data quality, we've got our custom solution. So just some Python tool coded up. And the SQL Fluff linter and many other linters too. So we've been spiking Great Expectations, for instance, and Soda SQL has been implemented by Patrick, who's among us too. But for now, we are not using that. We've also been thinking about implementing data contracts more on a lineage like layer, but still, as many other topics, not finished, not implemented yet.
Another question that I can see, you've talked a few about data governance and other subjects like data lineage, and if we could tell something about it. So generally, these are ideas still in a roadmap, and we would like to either use Data Hub here or DBT. And there is also an initiative from the analytics teams, and they're actually leading some data governance initiatives, and especially in conjunction with business. What else? I don't know if...
There are some questions to Petra too. Simona asked one, and Rafał recently as well.
Okay, so let's start with Simona's one, as I think that was the first one. So how do you prioritize between external requests coming from business users and internal activity that needs to be done, for example, migrations, code refactoring, optimizations, and so on? So this is standard case that we have, what you said, business requirements project and more of a tech-related project. And we combine them in each quarter, and they're planned ahead of time in alignment with the business. So what is being planned is expected for us to support purely business requirements. And we normally divide the team and work on the projects in parallel. So we might have one team working on more business-related project and one sub-team, let's say, on the refactoring, for example. So the reprioritization might only be necessary or in place if this requirement is an ad hoc and it comes outside of the agreed agreement, let's say, of what we are going to deliver in the quarter. And then the whole team decides what is the business impact, and if it's justified, then we might put on hold the tech project or shift it for another business project in place. So it really depends on case by case. But what we try to do is to plan it ahead of time with all the stakeholders involved, including the business, because normally these are bigger projects that are advanced ahead of time. So I hope that answered your question. And Rafał's, wait, can you help? Okay. How do you organize your work? Roadmap, do you use a Kanban board? How does it look like? All right, so we are organizing our development cycle in a 2-week sprint, followed by 1 week of maintenance window. So this would be following the Scrum methodology. While a lot of work in our team requires exploration and shaping the project, so finding out what is actually needed to be delivered. And we are also using the shape-up methodology. So that's a combination of 2 of them. Initially, we also started with Kanban, but then we transitioned to Scrum board. So we have the sprint board in use currently. So yeah, we organize our work in 3-week cycles.
And if I may answer once more, because right now I'm just seeing again what Rafał mentioned about Data Vault, and he wants to know if we upload the satellites to store only current version here. So generally we use a raw layer where we keep the satellites with their full history of data, and we build some views on top of this that would contain only the current version of data. Or in some other cases, we have we just have a flag column which says is current, for example, or something like that. I guess it answers your question now.
Okay, Jupyter Notebook question was already answered by Wojtek. Well, I guess it's time to wrap it up. You've been fantastically active in the chat section, the Q&A, and I was frankly expecting to be in bed by now, but the questions kept coming, which is really nice. It just shows that the need for a data engineering tech meetup is here. So I think we may as well oblige to organize another edition in some time in the future. Yeah, it was great to see. I just, you know, keeping it data security and stuff. I just wanted to say that it was so nice seeing two of our former colleagues in the call. It was great to see you guys. Hope to see you in person. Yeah, and thank you. And the rest of you, we are very glad that you came here, just to a smaller amount, but still very, very glad.
Yes, I would like to thank you as well, all. I don't know when was the last time I had to talk to so many people, but it was quite pleasing. And I hope I covered your questions, guys.
Yeah, and as I mentioned at the beginning, our intentions were pure. We are not hiring right now in the team, but still feel free to check out our Docplanner.tech page. It's quite a nice page as well. And we are going to send out a feedback survey after the meetup. So if you would please fill it out and share your feedback, we will definitely pay close attention to your remarks.
And if I can also say my thank you part, we are not hiring, but I'm super happy to grow my LinkedIn network. So if anybody would like to connect, I have the same name on LinkedIn. And thanks for staying with us until now. It's very late after work hours, so I really appreciate it. And thanks, Wojtek, for hosting this and the whole organizing team for making this possible and rehearse with us all the way up till now. So thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.